All right, Lorenzo, happy to talk to you, man. This is good.
Thanks for having
Usually
me.
there's a crew. It's like you and Dan or me and Tom, or we've had other mortgage guys from like Alberta, other private lending guys. So it's nice.
That's good. Appreciate you having me.
The first memory I have of you is me teaching you how to play soccer at the side of a baseball field.
I actually remember that.
Do you actually remember
me
that?
And my brother. It was like, this probably, I guess it was, I didn't realize it, but I guess that was like a Rockstar member event back then playing baseball.
It was just a one-time thing. We did like a Rockstar picnic, and we rented a baseball field. And who was the best soccer player out of you guys? Because your whole family played soccer.
Yeah, me and my brother and sister played. Yeah.
I don't mean like, but like you were all good, I think.
Yeah,
okay,
we were all pretty good.
But
I guess technically I went the furthest. I guess I played at school.
I was just trying to remember. Was it me? Like, because I was trying to get the ball off all you guys, to be fair, and I couldn't do it. And I was like, I'm looking at your dad, and I'm like, what is with these kids? Why can't? He's like, yeah, give them the ball. See if you can get it off them. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I can get the ball off them. That was funny, man. You guys were like, who's this old guy chasing us around the field?
Yeah, he had his training back then.
I like it when you called him Sergeant Surge at the at one of the events. Well, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It was your brother, actually.
Yeah, it was my brother.
That was funny.
Oh, yeah.
And so
it was interesting growing up playing soccer, reading that. It was like, there's just all me, my brother. I felt bad for my sister most of the time. Just not you feel bad, but just she was just involved with just me, my brother, and my dad, and then we were just everything's going crazy. Right. So she's just kind of there watching.
Do you know? I mean, do you know the story? I don't think we've had your dad. It would be great to have your dad on the podcast, actually. But do you know the story of how we first met?
He's told it to me, like at Applebee's or something like that. Or what was it?
No, it was at our first office when we had just started, and I was meeting with him, and there was some stuff going on with some of his rentals. And like, hey, here's the situation I got myself in. And
the Brampton places.
Yeah. I wasn't going to go into any of the finer details, but I was like, oh man, okay, yeah, you really got yourself in a situation there. And anyways, he never ended up like signing up. I'm like, Tom, you wouldn't believe it. I just spent like 3 hours talking to this guy trying to help him. He's like, thanks, that was great. See ya. And I'm like, what the heck? And then he finally circled back, whatever. It was a year later or 6 months later, whatever it was. And then actually he's been a member ever since. Yeah. So that's been, I don't know. I don't even know how long we've been doing this now, 15, 16 years or something like that. So it's worked out. But so you grew up with like parents that were investing in real estate, and that would have been, how old were you when we were playing soccer then?
I don't know, like 7, 8 maybe.
Okay,
so 10. So
as back as you can remember, as far as you can remember, you guys have had rental properties.
Oh yeah, even I remember being a kid, like again, like between 8 and 12 years old, going with my dad, me and my brother going with my dad to fix up properties. Even like times where we have like really bad tenants in RTOs, we'd go in there to help with evict. Like last day, we'd all be there, right, clean out all like the hoarders. I remember. So yeah, I've been doing it since I was like, can I remember?
Okay, so you know what? To give everyone context, I want to circle back, but to give everyone that doesn't know you, because I know a lot of people listen to this will know you, but to give everyone context, you do what now? So
right now I'm a mortgage broker with Better Mortgage Select. I'm a partner there with Dave Butler, Daniel Pad, and Michael Zanzini. So we have our own brokerage. It's a mortgage brokerage, so we're helping Canadians, mainly Canadians, some obviously foreigners as well, just get mortgages in Canada via investment properties, commercial properties, owner occupied. So we're a full service mortgage.
Yeah, and we've been working with you guys since day one, from Dave and then Dan and you and Mike and everyone. So, but okay, so circling back to this then, so how did so at that age you're growing up in this family that has these real estate investments, you're involved in these things. Like, what were you did it shape you in any way? Did it teach you lessons? Like, I know it's a loaded question, but like, I don't know. I'm just curious, because we get asked questions all the time. Like, hey guys, what are you showing your kids? What are you teaching your kids? You know, so I'm just curious from your perspective, because you were the kid in that type of scenario. Yeah. What were you taught? What did you learn?
It started off as like the tenant profile back then too is probably like 2008. Like what wasn't really good at all. It was terrible. It was different. It was really bad. Like you weren't getting like tenants with like 700 credit scores and just on the cusp of buying a house. Like you were, especially in some of the areas my parents had places. It was a rough tenant profile. So a lot of it was come see this and learn what not to do when you're older kind of thing. It was like one of those like old school like European parents, like don't be like that. So there was a lot of that, and so that's kind of how it first started. Is they wanted us to be to learn the business side of like what they were doing and see what they were doing buying properties, but also B is look what these it was kind of like almost like one of those be grateful kind of things for what you have, which obviously was great. And then so that's kind of how it started. And then obviously we'd go into the house.
But you must have been forced to go with them at that time.
Yeah, definitely. definitely when you're kids, like you definitely got, it was definitely out of force.
Yeah, because you didn't want, okay, I was sure. I'm like, I don't think you were like, yeah, Dad, let's go. I'm really excited to go here right now.
Yeah, well, at first we didn't even know kind of what was, like, I honestly remember just going because they would bring us everywhere, like kind of thing. So like whatever, usually we'd go to like wherever. So like first we didn't really notice. And then it got to a point where, it was like, hey, we're going to the house today. And we never really fought it too much, to be honest. Like,
it was just a normal part of life.
Yeah, it honestly was just normal. It wasn't like something new, because it happened, I guess, when we were starting so young. Like, it's not like I had friends at like 10 years old that were like going to be supposed to hang out and party on Saturday night. So it was just one of those things that it was just, I knew about it. I was like, okay, we got to go to the property on the weekend, tenants leaving or whatever the case may be. So it was just normal then. And so it was just more so getting exposed to it all, like seeing the hard part of it, I guess that would be, in being a landlord. There was no property manager. We didn't have a property manager. It was my parents. And then whenever we'd have to go. So that was the biggest piece of it. And to me, I just started kind of seeing it. I just knew it was an investment. Like, I knew that they were doing it for the future and as an investment. And I kind of they started explaining the cash flow. And even a big thing for us when we were kids, like, maybe weird or not, but at the dinner table as kids, all we would talk about is the properties. Like, my parents, that's the only thing they would talk about.
Really?
Yeah, as kids, like, talk about soccer, obviously, like whatever, everyone's day. But then for like 80% of our family dinner was always somehow about businesses or the real estate they had or what they want to buy next or the properties.
So not like problems with the properties.
Both. Yeah. Both. Okay. Yeah. Everything. It was like, but it was always about some sort of business, like real estate venture or problems they're having, how they're fixing it. And I guess, I don't know if it was they wanted us to hear, which they probably did, or they hadn't talked all day, had to figure out what to do because all the tenants were probably blasting them with texts and emails and stuff. And so it was just, that was the easiest time to do it. But yeah, that was a lot of, like, I remember even as a kid, like, that's what we talked about at dinner. And that was basically, and so then you're just exposed to it, honestly, all day, like not all day you're at school, but every day you're exposed to it in some way. And then as you keep getting older, you just keep finding ways to do it. And then I guess I got in a good way to see how hard it was at first for my parents to go through like the tenant problems. And obviously it wasn't easy to buy properties back then either. To then 5 years, it looks like they're doing a lot better with it. 10 years, look, it's doing really well. And I'm still 16 at the time or 17. Yeah. And so I'm starting to see how it pays off. And so then that's what kind of got me hooked, basically. Yeah,
I guess when you have that context of that age, because when you look back, like, real estate over 1 or 2 years kind of,
it's not worth it over 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. But when you look back, when it compounds and you can look back after 10 years, you're just like, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
This just got interesting really quick. So if you're 16 and you see your family's fortunes change, it's not like you guys were in a terrible spot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I just mean, if you've seen the growth and the progress just as a family, how you guys get through that point, get through that time. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here. But versus like when you're like when you're a 40 or 50 year old and you see that, it's a lot different when you're 16. All of a sudden your eyes, right? Because then you went away to school.
Yeah, so then I went to school.
You went to
Guelph? Yeah, I went to Guelph for business.
Yeah. And then, but while you were at school, this is when I was like, when I was talking to your dad, I was like, what's he doing? Because I forget who told me the first time, but then I found out that you were, at one point, you were filling student properties for landlords.
When I got to school, I was just, again, my parents are also like very much like, not like pay it for yourself. Like, they took care of my school, but if anything I wanted, or if I wanted to rent instead of live at home at school, well, okay, pay for it. Or I wanted a car or whatever, I had to kind of find ways to pay for that stuff. So it was just more, not a necessity, I guess, but I remember like just being like, hey, I got to figure out a way to start making some money now. And so then, again, what did my parents used to do? They used to fill properties and stuff like that. So then I realized, like, if you just fill a property, someone will give you a fee for it. And so, I started my first like a small business at that point. And so I was filling properties all over, like Guelph area, St. Catharines, Hamilton, Stony, like everywhere, basically. Did you have a job before that? Did you have, like, when you were in high school, like a part-time job? I probably had a job since like a real job since, I don't know, like,
okay, got it.
I can remember, yeah.
So like retail or
fast I was in like food place. Grocery stores, grocery stores, refereeing, newspapers, like since I was like grade 5.
Okay, so you've always been someone that's been willing to kind of...
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's that. And then that was kind of my parents too. Like, as soon as I was in like grade 4, I was like, all right, you get a paper route now. And so they brought me down to the Burlington Post at the time and maybe get a paper route. And then so that's kind of how it started. But so I've always had a job.
Was there pushback from you at that time?
I don't think so. Honestly, no. I was always okay with it. I remember the paper route my brother and sister weren't as happy about, but they were also younger than me too. But no, I was just okay with it always. I was always like just happy to be busy. I never really pushed back on that. I remember my dad might come and say, he was pissed. I don't remember being pissed.
We'll get the other version.
Yeah.
No. But okay, so then hold on. So then you were in Guelph and you realized that So you started filling properties because you started filling for student properties.
So that ended up happening. I realized there could be a business of it. And then first thing is, how do I find basically clients for this business? And so what I did first for that business, I realized that everyone was renting out properties on Kijiji, and I knew that because I said I've rented one of my parents' places before, and they were just like, hey, where'd you do it? On Kijiji. So I replied to every single person for probably like a month straight. It must have been thousands and thousands of people just saying, hey, and I made a little script. Here's what I do. I can rent your place out. And I replied to everybody's ads who were posting for tenants. And then eventually you end up getting one or two people say, hey, sure, like come fill my place. And that's kind of how it started. So then I started filling properties for them. And then just with referrals, and obviously then you start meeting new people, and kind of snowballed from there. But it was effectively just a leasing business, but you're just renting out properties for landlords, property managers, investors, things like that.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. And that, you know, it's what so many people don't do, is they don't just sit down. Like responding to all those ads is like the worst part.
Oh, it took me like hours and it was like awful. Like, and it got to like, it was awful.
You were probably cross-eyed by the end.
It was just like when everyone, and it was okay too, because sometimes like when everyone's at school, like everyone, let's say we're in the library for whatever reason, or everyone's doing their work, I was just doing that. And I just sit there, copy, paste, and copy. And it was a lot, right? And eventually it's after like 2 weeks, you're like, oh, it's probably a stupid idea. And then just keep going with it. I just never really had that like, oh, maybe I should just give up. Like, I don't know why it never hit. It just never, like, I never thought. I was like, someone's like, oh, well, you keep doing that? And I was like, yeah, like, why don't you just stop? And I was like, I don't know. Right. And so there's no real answer.
It can be like a really good, it can be a really bad trait too, but it can be a really good trait too.
Yes. Right? Yeah. So then anyway, it ends up working out. And so then I started leasing out properties.
And it was all you. Did you have other people starting to lease them out for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It ended up growing. It ended up getting big.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So it ended up getting big through and this kind of early part of university. So this is like, so it ended up getting pretty big, where I was doing like, I don't know, probably like 20 to 30 unit properties a month.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I got like, and so like literally I couldn't handle it all, and that's like also a lot of learning too. When you're like 17 or 16 or even 18ish, you start hiring your friends to work for you that are also 17.
Oh God, I can't imagine the lessons in that.
Like, oh my God, like you just like crazy stuff, right? Like you just see the dumbest things, and you're like, oh God. So yeah, that was also a lot of learning, and then through that, obviously, I guess backpedal a little bit to kind of how I even got started here. So then I would always come because my dad was a Rockstar member. My dad would bring us to the member events, and that was his big thing. Like I knew when there was a member event coming up like weeks in advance. Like
really?
Oh yeah, he was like, you're coming to this, I don't care what's going on. And I never fought it, to be fair, but it was just, I knew like that was like the thing. I knew Saturday morning we were going to the member event at Rockstar. And then I guess it was right before I was going to school. I think I was in grade 11, 12. I think grade 11 probably. And so I knew my dad was always getting properties. He was, I know he was like, he'd always tell me too, because this is kind of how I got into the mortgage side, how important getting the mortgage was. And he was dealing with Dave Butler at the time. And Dave was just kind of getting them properties like great. And Dave was the guy, but like my dad would always tell me that like, that's how you're getting your mortgage from. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You don't have an option.
This is it. And like, and even like, I remember again, being a kid, my dad would do all the phone, like when we would drive to soccer, my dad would do his phone calls. So like we wouldn't necessarily, we'd talk on the way home, but on the way to soccer, for example, it would just be calling work. And so I'd just be hearing all day's work calls. Right. And that's kind of how that first started. Right.
I do that with my kids now. And I think it's valuable, but I don't know. I'll know.
For me, I remember it still. Right. So I knew it did something, I guess. I don't know what it did, but I remember stuff like that. So anyway, he'd call Dave, or he'd call like Mike DeZormo's realtor would call him, or whoever. And I would just be hearing it all the time. And so anyway, so I got to a point where I was, again, saving up a bunch of money. I had all those part-time jobs, and my parents were like really big on saving too. Like I wasn't allowed to spend money. So I was allowed to go out and work, but then if I wanted to buy something, I wasn't allowed.
This is great. This is great. I like this level of discipline in the Podda household. Solid.
Yeah, it was solid. Yeah. So anyway, so then, so I ended up like, obviously you accumulated not a ton, but enough money where I was in like grade 11 or 12. Yeah, I guess grade 11 or 12.
And at that time, it even though it's like not a ton in today's dollars, or, you know, because you're used to, especially like in mortgages, you're used to much bigger numbers.
Yeah.
At that time, man, it's a lot.
Yeah, it was huge.
And there's a lot of hours put into saving, even if it's like whatever the number, if it's $20,000, but to save $20,000 at the wages at that time too, because minimum wage wasn't $15.
I was making like $9.80 an hour, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? So it just changes it. So at that time, it feels like the $10,000 or $20,000 feels like a whole ton of money.
Yeah. Exactly. And so this was even before the rental business started. So this was literally just like hours working at a grocery store, just doing odd little side stuff and figuring it out and that kind of stuff. So anyway, saved a bit of money. And so I knew I was coming to the Rockstar event. So I was like, okay, I was starting to kind of like it. I saw, honestly, the energy in the room was just one of those things for me. I was like, I want to be a part of something like this. So then anyway, knew I wanted to buy a house, came to the Rockstar event, started learning a lot. And obviously the economic updates, I thought I was always really like intrigued by that stuff too.
It's interesting that you were at that age, that you were intrigued by that stuff, right? Because a lot of people would dismiss it, right?
Correct. I don't know why I was, to be honest. I just actually was. And so that was kind of the early part of it. But anyway, at that event then, obviously Dave at the time would have a booth at the Rockstar events. And so that's when my dad actually introduced me to Dave. And that's literally when I first met him. And the first thing I just said to him, because he was probably he's looking at me, just, I don't know, some other client's kid, right? Just like he should. And I said to him, I want to buy a house. And he went, okay. And actually graciously he said, okay, call me. Like, sure. Like, and he probably thought like, I'll never call him, or just trying to be nice at the time. And ended up going, like I was serious. So I actually wanted to buy a house. So a couple of days later, gave me his number and stuff. I called him. And then, so he was like, oh, okay, he's actually serious. And then he said, okay, go get a credit card. Because the first thing you got to do when getting a property is you got to build your credit, the income and a down payment. He's like, I already have the down payment. He's like, okay, we'll figure out the income. You're gonna have to get a job at some point, but go get a credit card. You got to build your credit first. And so that's when I went, and he showed me how to apply for the credit cards. Go to the Capital One. There's a credit building card and the Home Trust Visa. So I call Capital One, and they kind of get the application out to me and start that.
So you were 18 by this point?
No, I was why I didn't get it. I was still 17.
Okay, because that's what I was gonna say. I thought you had to be 18.
Yes, well, that was the problem. So that's how we all learned that. So they didn't. No one knew, right? So that was the whole thing. So I called, they applied, and then they ended up turning me down. And they came back and they were like, hey, you have to be 18 to get a credit card. So I called Dave and I'm like, hey man, I got to be 18. Like, I'm not 18 yet. And he was like, oh shit. Like, I don't even know if he realized I wasn't 18. Yeah. And he was like, I didn't even know that was a rule. Like, he was like, okay, just call me, I guess, when you're 18 and we'll figure it out then. So yeah, then a little bit of time went by. I go off to school. And then while I'm at school, I'm starting this rental business. And so kind of doing that in the same time. And then I turned 18. So right away, it was like, I was in the middle of school year. I guess I was like some December baby. So get my credit card, call Dave. Hey, I got my credit card. I think then he's like, oh, okay. He's actually doing something about this.
Well, if he followed up a year later, he must be like, oh my God, the guy's still serious.
Yeah, he's still serious. So, and I really was. So then anyway, so I get the credit card. So then we jump on a call. He walks me through how to start building credit and things like that. And then I go back to school, keep doing my thing, starting to build the credit up, because it's going to take 8-9 months to get your credit built to where you can then start actually trying to do something. So anyway, so as it's going, I'm renting out properties. And then I realized my parents were big on just like, even though you have all your little side things going on, you got to get a real job. And that was kind of always a thing, make sure you get a real job. So I was thinking like, where can I, like, who do I know? And I'll call Dave. Let's see if he'll give me a job, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's kind of how it happens.
Yeah, so, I never actually asked either of you how, because I just, one time I remember you showed, I learned, or I saw you at his office. I forget what it was, but I never actually knew the story of how you guys. I'm sure it was through the connection.
Yeah, it was told
properties.
Dad,
I didn't know how it actually happened.
Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of how it happened. So I said I need a job, and I called my dad. I'm like, hey, do you think if I asked Dave for a job, like that's what I'm thinking? Like, everyone has to get a business job. Like, is that good? And he goes, all right, try. And my dad was always very in this to like the good thing, I guess, that helps me now is he was always like, I'm not calling for it, you call. Like to anything. Yeah, like if I had to go have a problem with a coach or whatever, he'd be like, okay, you go deal with it, right? And like as a kid, you're scared, but then then you just kind of figure it out.
Yeah, that type of that instills so much personal growth in people that I think it's discounted sometimes, especially sometimes because sometimes I call my children bubble babies because of certain things that'll happen. I tell my wife, I'm like, yeah, we raised bubble babies. Yeah. Because we like it's, and it's like that type of stuff. And sometimes I never want bad things to happen to my kids, obviously. Yeah. But sometimes when things do, I'm like, well, the good side of this is, you got to learn to deal with it. Yeah. So it's kind of good that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You just throw in the fire and you kind of,
life's not going to just be like rainbows and unicorns. You got to figure it out.
Hey, it's Anthony Molinaro from the Your Life, Your Term show. And I've got some exciting news. On Saturday, April 12th, we're hosting our biggest and most in-depth Your Life, Your Terms event yet in Mississauga, Ontario, and space is filling up fast. This is your chance to join us for a transformational day packed with powerful insights, strategies, and connections systems to help you live life on your terms. We'll be covering the biggest real estate opportunities, what's happening with the Canadian and global economy, how to protect and grow your wealth with Bitcoin and hard assets, and how to use marketing strategies and disruptive technologies to build freedom and income for yourself. But here's the deal. Tickets are going up the closer we get to the event, and with the early flood of registrations, we'll likely be hitting capacity. If you want to guarantee your seat and save some money, register now before it's too late. And remember, if you're a Rockstar Inner Circle member, your tickets are completely free for yourself and your guests. Head over to yourlifeyourtermsevent.com and secure your spot today. You don't want to miss this one. That's yourlifeyourtermsevent.com.
Yeah, so anyway, I ended up calling Dave, and I just said, hey, listen, like, I'm looking for a part-time job in the summer. Like, would you guys be hiring? And I don't think he's probably ever hired a summer kid before. Like, he's probably never even. So he was kind of like, yeah, I guess sure. Like, you know, he's probably just doing a favor to my dad. Just like, okay, obviously I'm gonna have to.
I doubt it, man. If some kid was around us, hanging around here for a couple of years before they were 18, then they circled back. Then did you buy a property by this point?
Well, I still wasn't. I just turned 18.
Okay. Yeah. But like, if they show that much initiative, then you're trying to figure out a way to make things work. Anthony, who's, you know, like Anthony showed up at our office. We had a job posting out that he really kind of wasn't, we didn't end up hiring him for that position because he wasn't really a right fit. There was we hired someone else for that position, and who's still here, by the way, too. Yeah. So that worked out. But Anthony, to his credit, he showed up at the office. He sat at the front of the office and he just wouldn't leave. I was in my office. Someone came there and said, hey, someone wants to talk to you about the posting. I'm like, well, like, they could have just applied. Like, I'm busy. You know, forget it. Like, I just got to finish my stuff. And then I was leaving the office that day, and there was some guy sitting in the front. I'm like, oh, who's this guy? They're like, yeah, that's the guy that came once to talk to you. Like, I'm like, you're still sitting here? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I mean, you've sat here long enough. So then he came in, we talked to him. I forget. He ended up, he was signed up as a member just before that, I guess. So I talked to him that day. Then I saw him at one of the classes on the Saturday class, talked to him there again. And before we made the decision about hiring, I was just like, I went to Tom, I'm like, I don't know, like, this person's a better fit, but there's this guy. And like, we felt like we just have to find, I feel like we have to find a position for him. Yeah. Like, he's just a good guy. He's smart. You know what I mean? Yeah. He did all the right things. And I feel that's what would come across.
Probably a lot of it too with Dave.
Yeah. He probably looked at you, was like, man, I don't know. Like, I know he's just 18, doesn't have experience, but I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it was probably a lot of it too, to be honest, because you're absolutely right. So anyway, he said, yeah, absolutely. Like, he gave me a job in the summer. So showed up for the first day, and I literally just sat in the boardroom basically. So I kind of just made my office the boardroom basically. So I was just sitting there, and in the first summer was just like, whatever, like, they had like old databases, go clean that up, go build this chair. We actually moved offices that summer. I did all the moving, or a good chunk of it, but stuff like that. And then I would get to go, like, that was kind of my mornings, just doing like cleanup stuff. And then in the afternoon, I'd go like with the sales guys, see what they were doing. So kind of just shadow and stuff like that. But it was a lot of like, I don't want to say like kind of, it was a lot of grunt work though at first, just like stuff that I don't even think we have the database. We actually don't have the database anymore. So there's a lot of stuff that probably didn't matter, but it was more so obviously just to see if I was actually serious about it. So then, that whole first summer kind of went by. In the meantime, I was always doing my kind of side stuff with the rental business and things like that. So that whole first summer went by. I enjoyed it, and I said, okay, I'm ready to buy a house now. So bought the house basically at that point, told AFK, like, I got to buy a house now. And that was one thing too. My dad was like always really pushing me to purchase a first property as well. So I ended up getting that at like, again, I think it was 18 or 19. I might have spilled over. And why do you think? Because real estate served him well, so he thought it would serve you well? Is that why? I think both, a couple of reasons. Yes, 100%. Like, he really believes still, like everyone does, like my family, but really believed in real estate. So that was a really big thing for him too. Part of it also was, I had ended up, like, because my business were going well, I was starting to accumulate a little bit of money. So that kind of little nest egg was starting to grow. And the whole thing, ever since we were kids, even my grandparents would say, like, money in the account's dead. So like, he just hated to see that there's money in the bank account. Like, that's just like, what's the point of that? And so probably like piece of it, that too, you got to do something with it. And then, he really served him well. And so he wanted really to get me started in it. Cool. So that was good, and find my first place, bought it. And then next summer comes up, call Dave again. Hey, can I get it? Because I ended up starting to like it. So I'm like, okay, can I get a job again? And then that summer too, I would be like, okay. And so that's when I kind of started really thinking like, I might want to actually do, like, I actually like this. And so the way I was always, like, the way I guess maybe I'm just wired that way, but it's always like, as soon as I find out, I'm like, okay, this is something I really want to do, then I just, whatever it takes now, I have to find a way to try to be the best at it, or just grow or at least be the best I can do it. And so that was kind of right away. So as soon as I realized, okay, so Dave's running this company, you got all the sales guys, here we go. Okay, well, I got to be where Dave's at, basically. And so right away, I would just start doing things like just try to move closer to his office, for example. So I'd make my desk right beside his just to hear his conversations and learn as much as possible. And so that was kind of the second summer, started to get a lot better at it. By the third summer, then I just remember at one point I was just like, honestly, screw it, I'm just gonna go sit in his office, and when he shows up, he's gonna have no choice but to teach me stuff. So I guess that's kind of how it happened.
There's so many lessons in what you're saying, though. I think you probably discount, and I don't know if those came from because some of the things that your parents put you through as a kid or whatever, but like just being, just recognizing like, okay, if I want to be in that position, then I got to figure out what that guy's doing and learn from him.
Exactly.
Like I'm just gonna be the fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And if I'm not the fly on the wall, I'm gonna be the fly just outside the office that I can still hear what's going on.
Exactly. And it's because I was watching a lot of like YouTube video stuff, but to really start to get into like business, because I actually really liked it. And the biggest thing you'd always see is if whatever you want to do, go find the person who's the best at it, like actually the best, and stick to them. And just obviously that's how you start, right? Yeah. And that's the way you're gonna learn. So when I kind of clicked in for me that was Dave, I was like, okay, like I'm going in, oh well, let's see what happens, right?
Yeah, but that stuff's not taught you at school.
No, and that's the big thing. And I always had this like, I guess love, mostly hate relationship with school. I just
mostly hate.
Yeah, it just wasn't for me. And like that kind of stuff, stuff that helped me, I didn't learn at school. So that, I guess that's a whole separate discussion. But yeah, so basically,
I was the same way. Look, I had a problem if I couldn't figure out why we were learning something and how it applied to, like, not even what I want to do like immediately, but just everyday life. I'm like, I just don't get it. I mean, if the gap was too big, I just tuned out. I'm like, I don't know. I don't care about this stuff. Yeah. It was just too much theory. And especially now, the way I look at it is like the world's moving so fast. By the time curriculums are updated, unless you have like, a prof or teachers or whatever that are really on top of things, kids are learning outdated stuff. Yeah. They're still learning principles. We need principles to be learned. We need, especially for things like math and language skills are so undervalued. Like this whole ChatGPT thing, and I get it. AI is good and like it's got benefits and stuff, but man, you need to be able to communicate as a person. Is such a powerful tool. And when I see the way my daughters write or text things, I'm just like, oh man, we're setting them up for failure here. Like AI is not going to be like, it's going to have to be complete intelligence, not just like part of it, because there's such wide gaps in what we're teaching these kids now, I think.
No, it's getting the power of AI is getting crazy, to be honest. We're starting to incorporate into our business heavily because I see how powerful it can be, but I also, when you think about it from that perspective of someone who hasn't actually learned the basics yet to now just start off using that, it's like they've almost never learned that.
Well, it's like the guy that comes to you now, right? Wants to do mortgages, but he doesn't want to put together the furniture and do the spreadsheets and clean up the database. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to do the mortgages. I was like, no, that doesn't work like that. You got to pay your dues to get to this point.
Exactly.
It's the same with the skill set. And it's one of the reasons though I like in our business, I'm comfortable asking anyone to do anything. And the reason why is because I've done it all. I've been on my hands and knees licking envelopes until we've shared that off. Like I've worked all sorts of hours, although we don't really reach out to people after hours and stuff like that. But it's just like, I still to this day, there's nothing that's beneath me. If something needs to get done, it gets done. I have no problems asking other people to do it if I'm not able to, so it's just like, and so to that skill set, I feel like the same principles apply to math and language and all those types of things, because if you have someone else figuring everything out, look at mortgages for an example. I'd imagine probably, I have no idea, but I'd imagine you were probably decent. I'm not talking about advanced math or calculus, but you're probably always decent at basic math and looking at numbers and figuring things out, recognizing patterns, or looking at just like an equation and seeing if the answer, even if it was there, kind of made sense or if something seemed off. Am I right or wrong?
Kind of. So I wasn't as a kid growing up because just like you said before, when I was in school, it didn't make sense to how I would use that. So to me, I was like, I didn't care. And then the second I got into mortgages and realized math is super important, within 2 years, again, just because of the work ethic, I would stay up all night, like now reteaching myself everything. So now I'm really good at it. Yes. And like, even I guess I learned it kind of quickly. So maybe I did have a little bit of an inkling toward it anyway. But as a kid, I was like, in school math, like, I was terrible.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, so now you're able to do.
Yeah, 100%.
So you don't just go in and use a calculator for everything. Now, if you use a calculator, AI or whatever, great, that's a tool you can use, but you can make sense of of what it's spitting out at you. My fear is when things get spit out, people just believe everything that's there, and now it's like that's where the problem lies. Because if you can't understand and you can't decipher true from false, or the mistakes that will inevitably come out in everything, then I just think that's where there's a misconception still of some people are already relying on it too much and they haven't built their own skill set. I have no idea if that's right.
I completely agree. That right, but the way I look at it's supposed to be there to help you be more efficient, not to like just be you.
Do it for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way we're looking at the AI side of it. It's just efficient. It's going to make everything way more
100%. Yeah,
so
I'm a believer and a supporter of it. I'm like, we need to leverage it. I need to teach my kids it and stuff.
Yes.
But at the same time,
you have to know what you're doing first, then to use it.
You got to be able to use your own brain too, not just a brain in a computer.
Yeah, 100%.
But okay, so I cut you off. So you were what?
So I was probably going into So at this point now, I think I was basically
18. Had your first property.
Yeah, in Dave's office now. Basically, just walked in there and said, "Okay, I'm just going to sit here now." Basically, and he was like, "Okay, perfect." So then, and that's when I really like my learning in mortgages in general just really went kind of, I guess, exponential
You're
at that point.
Someone that's doing volume,
exactly.
You're seeing all sorts of deals going through.
Exactly, I'm seeing every single piece of a deal. I'm seeing how he handles it at that level too. So that was massive for me, and that's when I kind of was like, "Okay, I really want to do this now." I really started liking it. So
why was Dave open to teaching you? Did no one else do that with him, or
I don't think
did
so.
He just kind of like,
I think it was a bit of both. But I don't think he was like, and he'll probably tell you like back in, you obviously know back in the day it was crazy like that. The office was nuts. Like everyone's going 100 miles an hour. So there's probably a lot of people that just weren't willing to just go and sit there and like just in the whole disaster of it all. And I had no problem. I don't know why. I had no problem with it. So I guess I think I was the only one that actually did that with him, to be honest with you. Not that I know of. But I think also at the same point, he was like, also, he must have saw something too that would have made him be like, okay, I'm actually willing to teach him as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it was a bit of both probably. So then I'm like, okay, so I went to Dave, so listen, I've got rid of all this other stuff I'm doing basically, like I really want to do this now. And at this point, I'm already in his office anyway, so nothing's really changing. But yeah, I started literally during my fourth university, just kind of abandoned going to school. I still finished, like I actually did the school, but every day I would show up to the office now. And so right from like probably midway through fourth year all the way to the end base, just till now, I started going to the office every day. And then I just ended up learning directly from him. And so that for like that couple year period, my learning went like exponential at that point. And so that was a big thing for me. It was just, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get good at this. So I just went to the best person I knew how to do it, showed him I can be of little value, but there's something I could do to kind of help him in a sense, whether it's make him a little bit more efficient, whatever it is, just to help him like extra shitty.
Yeah, well, you're willing to do anything. I think that shows a lot, really.
100%.
Do you think you like it now, or you liked it then do you think as you got, like, do you think you just liked it initially, or it's because you started either seeing potential or started getting good at it, and then that made you like it more? Because this is always a question that I have with my kids. I'm like, hey, look, sometimes it's like, everyone says do something you like or do something you love, right? And I don't disagree with that, but I'm like, sometimes I think in life you end up loving some things that you're good at, and you might not like them at first. And as you become better at them, because you're good at it, you're like, I like doing this. Like, you're pretty good at it.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Because like at the end of the day, it's still mortgages. Like this isn't like something super fun and like, oh, like look, it's mortgages. It's not. It's kind of dull, to be honest, in a sense of. It's a lot of effort work and it's kind of crazy, but it's just mortgage. So it's nothing like you go home and you'd be like, oh, I'm an astronaut. Like, you're doing mortgage.
Yeah, but there's like when you piece a deal together.
It's cool. And so I like that part of it. Absolutely. Right. And so there's a lot of it in there. So I think it was more just like I saw an ability to be able to make, to be honest, just flat out, I was always kind of really hungry and driven, just wanted to be as good at things as possible, and also want to make a lot of money, to be honest. And so I saw something where I was like, hey, it does well. It's an industry that does well. I think it's growing. It looks like obviously something that I can do and I can be good at. Like I understood that, and Dave was really good at breaking it down, just how to be good at it and kind of simplifying it for me as to like, there's 3 little things you follow kind of thing. And that kind of stuff would always help me. So I saw a way to grow in it as well. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go crazy at it. And then eventually over time, you just love it too. And now it's kind of just the second nature. So I don't know if I had passion for it, like right off the bat, to be honest.
That's why I'm asking. It's hard to be like, I don't think mortgages. I've just always dreamed of,
Yeah. He's like, no one says that, right? So it was something that I've always wanted to do something in business. I wanted to be able to have something high pace, high pressure, like sales kind of environment. And like be able to like.
Why did you want that before?
I think, I don't know. I'll be honest.
It's off a movie, you think?
No, not honestly. Like, I've just my whole, like, I've always been like, and through soccer, like, it was always fast paced, high pressure. Like, I was just always used to it. And then my parents obviously pushing, and like, they're always pushing just to like, become the best, or not to be the best at it, but just the best that I guess.
So you can be.
Yeah. Sounds kind of cheesy, but
no, but I mean,
but yeah. So I guess, so that was kind of it. And then I kind of just saw it with mortgages, and I went, okay, let's go for it. So in my head, basically, and obviously, so I kind of just went, let's go for it. And that's kind of, and then I just went like hard, and like, it wasn't just kind of, okay, 9 to 5, I'm gonna go work now. It was like, that's it, like 9 a.m. to 4 a.m., 3 a.m. Like, it was just nonstop, and it's still like that, but it's just go as hard as you can, as fast as possible, learn as much as possible, do as much as you can, and then over time, like, I guess I've been doing it now for almost like 7-8 years, basically.
Yeah, but how old are you?
26.
Okay, keep going, because I'll circle back to that.
So I've been doing it for now, like, I guess 7-8 years, but I've probably put more hours into it than like a 50-year-old. Right. And so that's kind of where like the learning just like, and it doesn't, to me, the age part doesn't, it's just how many hours you put into it.
Yeah. And I know as a team, the volume that you guys have put through. So the amount of experience you have, it can be in that world. If you're just doing more, that the experience can be squeezed into a shorter period of time.
That too. So it's hours. And then the sheer volume that our office does was just, okay, so now you're seeing more amount of deals than pretty much anyone, and you're doing it more time than pretty much anyone. It's like shooting free throws, or you're practicing soccer or something. If whoever's going to put more time into it, if you get two people that are the same, let's call it raw talent level, it's whoever's going to end up working harder at it, it's going to end up being better. Right. So, and that's kind of the way I saw it. And I always had that like kind of work ethic, the hard work, kind of just keep pushing. And so, yeah, so I just went, okay, let's go as hard as I can. And so I've just been still doing it like crazy. And it's kind of starting to now, I'm like, okay, I can start to see that. You sit back and like, oh, okay, like I now realize like the knowledge is there. Like, it's all.
Yeah, you've built a foundation that you can leverage. I'm curious, did you ever have a moment like this? I was on the construction site. My dad started, when did I start with I don't know how old I was when I started with my dad in construction, but I feel like the first time was, it was cold and it was winter break. So my winter break off school, I don't know if it was elementary school or high school. There was probably some labor laws at that time, which my father did not care about, because he's like, I don't care if there's labor laws, you're coming to work. So I went to the construction site and I was picking up drywall scraps and putting insulation in. And I remember those big torches on the construction site, and I'm like a young kid, and I'm like, I'm freezing, and we're finding a place to have like some corner that's kind of heated and blocked from the wind to try to sit down and have some lunch. And I'm like, this is not what I signed up for, you know. And then I was making some hourly wage, and just because I was the boss's son, I wasn't like, trust me, I was getting paid less because I was the boss's son. There was no favoritism there. But then it was one day, I don't even know if it was that time, because I worked for just a brief period of time. I think it was next summer. I was working on site, and that's when I learned that the drywall guys and the good steel, the good framing guys, they were getting paid piecework. So they would get paid by the amount of work they did, not just time. And I'll never forget that. I was like, what? So these guys, if they work fast, and better, they get paid more. But if I work fast and better, it doesn't matter, right? So this was just this mind-blowing thing to me. And then from that point, I was like, because when you were talking about sales and business, you wanted something like that. From that point in my life, I was always just like, I really want to do something where I get rewarded for the results that I bring, not just like this time thing, you know? And I'm just did you ever have a moment like that where you were, I don't know, like, because you had past jobs, and then it probably would have even started before mortgages, because when you started filling properties, it wasn't so much a time thing.
That was the big one, right? Because you end up like, you have times where it's like you're going to a property 12 times to try to fill it, but then you have times where, especially at scale, you'd get a group of people and fill 5 in a day, and then and so that was obviously a big piece of it, where I'm like, I like to kind of live like the hunger basically side of it, where you're like, I just get rewarded for what I do. Like, basically the value I put out is the value I get back. And so I was very like, that to me is like, that's the best way to run anything, to be honest with you. It just makes it fair. A, it's fair, and B, it's just, now it keeps everyone honest, right? You can't slack off, and you can work too hard and you get paid more, so or you get rewarded more, or whatever it is. So that was always big for me. Even again, as a kid, like, my dad would always be like, you got to find something that, he was always big on that, because he had a sales corporate job, but just find something that doesn't just pay you 9 to 5. Find something that if you put more work in or you do better, then you get rewarded for it. So that was always really big in our house anyway. So I just, again, not that I just knew, but it was taught to me obviously, but just I'm so young. It's just
because he was in sales already. So he saw that, right?
Yeah,
if you've lived that and you've experienced benefits from that, because not everyone does, right? Because it's, especially in sales, it's tough, right? Get a lot of doors slammed in your face, whatever. But once you experience the benefits of that, it does change perspective a little bit, right?
It's honestly, I could never go to a salary now. I think it would just, I don't even know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I can't picture like getting just to be like, hey, I'm just like stamping and make some money like that. To me, it's not
even just the salary. It's like if you put me, because people come into our office and they're like, this is a real estate brokerage. We're like, not really. I mean, and no one here feels like they work for a real estate brokerage. It's funny because when we advertise, when we have like a position open and we're doing interviews, people are like, well, I love real estate and that's why I'm coming here and stuff. And I want to do, we think you do this. I'm like, okay, so our business is nothing like that, right? It's nothing like what you're telling. What you're saying is that you're going to be doing none of that. Yeah. That's still okay. But what were we talking about right before that? I lost my train of thought there. You were talking about
it's just like being commission based or being like earning like value coming in.
Yeah. Anyways, I already forget. But anyways, so I was gonna move on because I'm curious to your journey then from mortgages when you were working with Dave, started learning that stuff. Obviously, you have a ton of experience now, but how did then? Because you're not just like a mortgage broker, like you said, you're a partner. You guys are like kind of running this. Like there's a few of you guys there that are really. I don't know how it's structured exactly. But how did that then go to the next level?
It was a lot. So basically, just again, I got obviously super close with Dave. He's been teaching. He's been a mentor for me. And so it just ended up starting to grow. And I just kept being the guy. It became to the point where I guess at the office it was like, there's a problem, Lorenzo. Just go see Lorenzo, let him figure it out.
Yeah. So you were the guy.
I guess you end up and not even by like, hey, there's an announcement one day. It just ended up happening kind of over time, and it just ends up becoming that way. And then obviously, like for me too, I have like a kind of a vision as to where I wanted to see myself, see the company, kind of build on more things other than just a mortgage approach, kind of build it as well. So Dave and I would talk about it, things like that as well. I would kind of bring up here are my ideas, like that kind of stuff. And so based on all that's kind of how it started to morph into. And obviously, and to be fair, he also saw that, okay, he's not just coming in to take a piece and then kind of leave kind of thing, or just...
Yeah, you were busting your...
Yeah, exactly. So I was still like, you know what I mean? So that was kind of, for them, that's kind of the way he sees it, he saw it. And so that's for us how that kind of became what we have now.
It's cool. And you guys get along and you work
together. Exactly.
And get stuff done, right?
It gets done well. And so that's kind of how, and then obviously Mike and Dan. So we all kind of have a really good partnership in that sense. And so,
wasn't Mike's... I think it was mom. Wasn't Mike?
Yeah, Mike's mom. Mike had a similar story to me. Yeah, Mike had a similar story to me, to be honest with you, because his mom was a member. That's how he met Dave. So yeah, Dave was kind of like pillaged all the rock star guys.
Yeah. I feel like we started a headhunting company for Dave's business, and there's some. I don't know what we're not basing it off what your salary was the first summer. Yeah. We're basing whatever Dave owes us off today's salary. Okay, that's what it is. So, but no, that's cool. That's cool that it worked out like that. You know what? It's the difference about kind of a community, like when people are kind of thinking the same way.
Exactly.
You were coming to these events, you were at a young age, you were surrounded with people like, I try to tell people, it's an investment community, but more than that, it's people that are just like, I kind of just want to, like you, I just kind of want to do things my way on my terms. And, how do I structure things to be able to do that? And, you had a head start because if you're thinking that way from a young age, you can do that from a young age, whereas a lot of us, we go down one path and then we have to change paths at a later point in life. And sometimes it's harder with different commitments, whether it's mortgages or kids or, whatever it is. It's just, there's just a lot more maybe risk involved than when you're starting out from scratch, right?
And that was the other big thing for me. Like, I didn't mind taking any crazy, I was very I guess risk. I mean, I was open to risk. I didn't really care. At the time, I didn't even have a house. I didn't have a house I lived in. I had rental properties, but I didn't have a house I lived in, so I didn't really owe any money to anybody. I didn't have family, kids, any of that. So I was just more go. I got nothing to lose. Just go for it. Take the risks. Do whatever it takes kind of thing. So then that to me was obviously and I'm okay with my personality. I'm just okay with that. I prefer, to be honest with you, I'm always one of those, I always tell people, it's if you're going to bet on something, just bet on why not bet on yourself? Right? As long as you know you can, like, you know it's within you to like figure it out, go figure it out.
Where does that stuff come from? That comes from your experience, because there's a few things you've said talking to you now that often it's people at your age aren't thinking that way. Do you think that comes from your parents? Did you do any, like, were you a reader? Like, did you go through personal development books and stuff?
I was honestly, it wasn't necessarily reading. It was a lot of like being on, honestly, like YouTube and stuff like that. That was honestly, it wasn't actually as much reading, but like audio,
like business videos.
Yes, like crazy amounts. Like it was like that's it. Like that's all I did for my university. Like life was basically soccer from whatever during the day, workout, whatever. That kind of stuff, business videos, that kind of stuff, and then my own little businesses, and that's what I did for years. And so
I remember, because I think at the cottage, this was now a few years ago, we had to be like, Lorenzo, make sure you like, because remember, like, you're like, this university thing's just getting in the way, and we're like, you're almost there, man. Like, you gotta finish the thing at this point. Just finish the thing.
So it could get finished, but that was kind of the way I saw it. And so like that couple of years of like late high school to like early like mid university, that honestly, like I can look back at it, but yeah, that actually kind of changed a lot of my mindsets on stuff. And it was 24/7. That's all I was doing. It was like pretty much all day. Obviously you have fun and whatnot, but like that was.
So you were just wired to try to figure things out. Like you were basically by watching that type of content, you were just trying to figure out. Yeah, it's almost like
without actually trying to do it. Like I didn't actually think about doing. I wasn't smart enough to have the foresight. But it was just by the way it worked out. I ended up kind of rewiring my brain, I guess, a little bit. To now I'm just anytime like, hey, it's on me to figure out. Like basically just the accountability side of it, saying if something's got to get figured out, just be on, like, make it yourself to be the guy to figure, the guy or girl or whatever to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I see it now. And so that's why
it's a trait I think that the minority of people have, because so many people right now, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm jaded, but it feels like there's a lot of people that it's always someone else's problem and someone else needs to then be there to help them. You know what I mean? That's where we get into these government situations where it's like, we run these elections and it's always like, well, what are you going to give me? That's what my vote is. Like, what are you going to give me? Instead of like, why don't you just, who's going to be the government that gets out of the way a little bit more
and lets everyone figure it out?
But I don't think people, like the minority of people, are looking at that as a quality to vote on or something. I just feel like we're still trending away from the self-responsibility. We haven't swung, that pendulum hasn't swung back yet. I think it will.
I think it's even starting. Like we've started, like one of the things we started doing is we always hire ex-bank people or someone who's been in the industry for everyone wants to try to hire with experience. And then probably 2-3 years ago, we stopped. Like it kept not working out. And people, it was like a revolving door of people, because they'd come, they'd suck, we'd fire them. And so
why would they suck? You feel like they didn't have work ethic?
Work ethic, probably part of it, but on like a lot of it too was like they have their own ways. Like especially in the mortgages, like if you're already stuck in your own way, most people aren't open to learning that kind of stuff. So it was just A, work ethic was bad. B, they weren't open to like new ideas and stuff like that. So they would come in with, this is how my bank did it, and it's like, okay, well, that doesn't help us, right? So that's kind of a lot of it. So that was kind of the like they were just, again, weren't very good. So we ended up going to the universities, kind of job fairs, because we ended up realizing, so all of our hires at the company, all of our people who are good is, like obviously we got Mike and myself who came from our parents. I brought my best friend on, Marco. So he's with us now. He's running our whole underwriting team. He's my age and he's
I didn't know that Marco was your best friend.
Yeah, so that's how Marco got into it. Because when I started coming at one point, so I was like when I started actually for like I'm leaving school kind of thing to start coming every day. After 2 or 3 months, all my buddies like, where are you going every day? Because I was going from Guelph, driving to Mississauga, driving back, right? And so that's kind of like, where are you going? And then I was like, going here. And then Marco, we'd always do stuff together, just kind of entrepreneurial stuff when we were kind of growing up, and especially in university. And then he was like, where are you going? I'm like, do you want to come? And he goes, sure. So I ended up just bringing him along too. Cool. Like without it, just without asking, just, all right, this guy's coming too now, right? So I just brought another guy. And so he would go just sit with like the fulfillment team, and see, that's kind of, his story is actually similar in a sense. But like anyway, Marco came in, we ended up hiring like obviously younger people, and just ended up always being a lot better. So we started just only hiring young people from university, or just that came in and that knew absolutely nothing about a mortgage. Most of them didn't even know what a property tax bill looked like, or that kind of stuff. Teaching them from scratch, and then you end up losing a bit. So like out of every 10, maybe 2 or 3 stick, like that kind of thing. But those 2 or 3 are then and they're hardworking and they're really good. So that's kind of changed a lot for us, because I do think like the younger people out there is, and not all of them, there's a lot of probably people that don't, but there is If you could find them, there's a really good percentage that are like doing actually wanting to work hard, and that pendulum's starting to come back down, to your point.
And I don't know how much the percentages were different. I mean, I know my friends and myself, like I operated differently when on my first job when I was whatever age that was, 21, 22, than I did after that. Yeah. There was just different, you go through different stages in life as well, right? But I was, I felt handcuffed at that time a little bit. I was in a place where I felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't get really further ahead, and I wasn't rewarded for it. And that's what actually got me into real estate investing. Yeah. What, you're around, like not around money itself a lot, but you're dealing with money a lot between mortgages flying back and forth. You see all sorts of, bank statements and stuff. I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
One, okay, so here's the first one. I had two conversations recently. One with someone that works with people that handles a lot of bankruptcies, insolvencies, things like that. One someone that handles a lot of high net worth clients. They both said to me independently, without me prompting them, that they felt that there was two different economies going on in Canada. There was one with people with assets and one with people without. And
agreed.
Yeah. So when you agree with that, like what are you thinking?
Well, if you look at even just what happened with COVID and the amount of money that was injected into the economy, it always floats whenever there's mass printing going on. By the end of a 4 or 5 year cycle, let's call it, it always ends up floating to the top. And by that, I mean the wealthier people, the top 1%, let's call it, people with assets. Like money will just end up floating to them because they have assets, businesses, things that basically attract money.
And you've seen that in like the applications that come across.
So what ends up happening, the guys who were obviously A, smart with their money to begin with, and then B, purchased assets, kind of started side businesses, but kept buying real estate, and they're buying good properties, they start to do a lot better. And so you notice when these kind of big cycles happen, their wealth starts to grow. And then the people who are trying to get into the market, for example, or haven't got quite done it yet, then all of a sudden it becomes harder for them.
Yeah.
So you notice that division then between the people who have properties and the people who don't, or the haves and have-nots, they call them, it starts to get bigger and bigger every time after every cycle that comes through. So I am noticing it.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I hate hearing that. Like every time I hear that, it bugs me.
And it's tough because then the government comes out with obviously the new mortgage rules, trying to make it easier for first-time home buyers, which is really good. Like we need to give everyone need a chance to get in. And so I like the rules in the short term, but they're also creating a much bigger debt bubble, which again, if you don't get in it now, let's say you don't hit this, it's going to keep getting tougher and tougher every time, just the way it's working.
But if affordability is so tough now, because that's where you focus on that, you see that all the time, how is it going to be possible for prices to go up anywhere from here, or do they have to keep coming down for affordability to be restored?
And I don't know if affordability will ever be necessarily restored. I feel like the assets will just go to the people that put themselves in the best position to obtain them. So like when I tell even my siblings or my friends, it's like your job's doing really good for you. Like you have a regular job, it's doing great, but we're not in an economy anymore where if you really want to get ahead or even buy the first house, working one job probably won't get you there, in the sense of, maybe you'll qualify with the amount of income you have on your application, but it's going to be tough to save the down payment. Government's taking half right away. Like it's going to be tough to save up that. You got to live, you got to rent somewhere. So just savings is obviously becoming a lot tougher as well. So people who are going to go out there and say, hey, I really want to get into the market, whether you want to buy real estate, Bitcoin, stocks, whatever that asset is for you, it's the people that are going to put the work in, have a little side business, do something aside, try to use that to save money. That's who will end up just getting ahead, in my opinion. Okay. The guys who just, again, normal jobs, it'll be good. You'll probably get in at some point, but especially just starting out, like it'll be really tough.
And then you see stuff in real estate investing, private lending, in the private lending world, because you do a lot of stuff with that. Residential private lending?
Both, yeah, residential, commercial.
Commercial as well?
Yeah, both.
Commercial, what kind of commercial stuff?
The commercial stuff, I like the multifamily commercial. Okay. I don't mind industrial stuff. Like, again, if I'm the lender, let's say, I don't mind industrial or regular retail. Like that stuff I don't mind. Certain loan to values, I'm a bit more conservative on some areas. Office space, as a lender, not a huge fan of it right now. Just
right now, because why? Work from home?
Work from home's obviously gotten a lot bigger. So, and even though like obviously we're getting an office, we're kind of going to be back in office as well, hybrid model, but it's not as big anymore. Now Amazon's calling people back, so it probably will come back. But if you're a lender looking at year over year cycles, because that's kind of what you have to do as a mortgage lender, office isn't probably your top priority. If I only have a certain amount of funds, there's probably safer investments into retail, industrial, and residential is obviously the easiest one.
Mm-hmm. What about in the private lending investing world, there's just a number of things. I don't want to mention any names, but there's a number of things that have blown up recently. Is from what you know of that, because I know you guys, when you're in the mortgage world, you kind of know. I'm curious what your opinion is, or no opinion. Do you feel like this was more a sense of someone took the money and made bad investments with it, or the money should have never been taken because was the investor the irresponsible one, or was the private lender, or the people facilitating the private lenders, were there kind of like, was there a blind eye turned there?
I think it's a bit of both. I would say, I think definitely a bit of both, because whenever something happens, everyone always should look at themselves and say, what could I, if everyone just stopped and, hey, what could I have done differently? Then obviously less problems happen. But I would say a lot more of the blame, if you're going to put a percentage on it, like I would say 85-90% of it would fall on the person raising and distributing the funds, so the lender in that sense.
Because they didn't vet the deal
They didn't
properly.
vet the deal. And to be honest, and if they did vet the deal and they lent on what we ended up seeing, it's just greed at that point. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to get money out to then make money.
Why? Because they're going
to get a little fee every time the money goes out, right? And who maybe against stuff like, who knows what other stuff they're trying to make, but that to me is just sheer like greed. Honestly, I don't know any other way to say it than just greed.
Yeah, it's when property prices keep jumping.
Yeah, and
then it's easy for everyone to get smart. But
I don't even think they had bad intent. Like I don't say the lenders themselves. I'm not saying the people raising and distributing had bad intentions to start off with. They might have just thought they found an easy way to make money, it's so great. But then obviously not educated, I guess, if that's, I guess what will happen, we'll call it not educated in the market, realizing that lending to 100% loan to value on a property or even past that is dangerous or probably not a good idea. Then you're going to get burned. Mm-hmm. Right. And at the scale they did it, obviously was terrible. Like, to be honest with you, there's a couple of them. And so that part where I'm kind of like, you just have to, especially if you're investing funds, you have to invest with do your due diligence on who you're investing with, but also have a trust in those people. And that part's kind of the tough part. You have to have trust in someone, but make sure you vet those people, that they're not putting your money in dangerous positions.
How do you do your due diligence with who you're investing with? Like, how do I know? So I'm looking.
Yeah. So if you're going to invest with someone, the biggest thing I'm looking at is, and it always comes down to, in the private lending space particularly, it's just, what's your loan to value? Obviously you want it, and you can go to these big private lending companies and say, okay, what's your average credit score? What's your loan to value across your portfolio right now? So ask those kind of questions. Lenders with good loan to values, meaning like basically you're not if your house is worth $1 million, the loan on it's not $1 million. It's much less than that. That's a lot of a safer investment. So, and also starting in small too. I always, like in any big investment I do, I always tip it, unless I'm 100% certain about this, when I scale in typically. And so
what do you mean, you test it?
Yeah, so test it. So start off, maybe if your number is $20,000, it's whatever. Let's just say you had 100,000. Don't put the whole 100 in. Maybe start with 20, see how it goes. Put another 20, see how that goes. So kind of work your way into it.
But if you're doing private lending, can you do that?
Oh yeah. 100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So some people will just accumulate different funds.
Correct. Exactly. Right. There's also small people who need 20 grand privates out there. So there's a lot of.
Oh, is there? Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. So people need a little bit of money. Maybe they got to just clean up a credit card or stuff like that, or they want to got to do the roof, right? That kind of stuff. So you'll see that a lot as well. But yeah, you can always start off with a really small amount of funds and then kind of scale yourself in. Make sure everything that's happening. Like, okay, so my first deal went well. I only put a little bit of money in. Went well. Okay, let's put a little bit more. It's just kind of test it out. That's my big recommendation to anybody. And so that's a big piece of it. And then, yeah, because it's tough, especially when you have deal presented to you. Like, hey, I personally guarantee, like anyone that says, hey, I'll personally guarantee this deal to you. And the deal itself that you're being pitched is more based on the person you're lending to and not the asset you're lending on. I think that's a big distinguisher as well.
Yeah, you got to walk, no matter what. Yeah. Basically, you have no security. You don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Like if someone's pitching you on, hey, this is obviously the person always matters in when you're lending, but if someone's big pitch is how good they're going to end up becoming and they're kind of selling you on future value, then that's a red flag right away.
Okay. What about, do people come to you asking about promissory notes lending? Like, do you guys do it?
So we'd never do it. I would suggest to never do it, to be honest.
But why were people okay, so maybe explain.
Yeah, so first, what a promissory note is, I guess for people who don't even know, it's so when people lend someone money on a mortgage, let's say, they'll take the mortgage and secure it to their house. So now if let's say I've lent Nick $20,000, I can then secure that $20,000 loan to one of his properties. So if Nick didn't pay me back, we can go and get the money from his property.
We can fist fight in the middle of the street.
Yeah, exactly.
In the middle, that's what we would do first.
Exactly.
And then regardless of what happens with the fist fight, then he can still go get the property.
Exactly. So anyway, so what people started doing is that, hey, maybe there's no equity in the property, or if I don't secure this loan to Nick's property or my property, whatever it is, I can get, instead of a 12% return, I can get a 15 or 17 or 20% return. So people are like, well, by not securing it, they're going to give me a bigger return because technically as the lender, there's more risk now. Well, now, yeah, as the lender, you've assumed all the risk, because now if the guy or girl doesn't pay, how are you going to get your money back?
So that was the main incentive why people were using promissory notes from what you saw?
Yeah, it was just way higher returns. And there was no more equity because they'd already used up all the equity through the other mortgages. So it's people who said, hey, I have a $100,000 house. To do everything I want to do, I need $150,000. They'll raise the first 100 secured to the house, and then that extra 50, they have to get it unsecured. So the incentive was, instead of, I can't find, like, obviously, I need it that way as the borrower, but then for the lender, it's, well, if I'm giving these guys 12%, just throw out a random number, I'll give you 18. And so now the lender's like, well, okay. Right. And so, and not realizing that a promissory note, it's really, talk to any lawyer, it's not like, there's nothing there. Right. And so
it's basically a handshake.
Yeah, it's basically a handshake. Right. And so that's what creates like a big danger, obviously, especially when it's large quantities of the kind of funds being lent out on promissory notes. There's no recourse if you can't get paid back.
So were you guys, I'm just curious in this world, because I know when there's, I'm trying to think of an example and I can't, but whenever there's some high flying new thing and, perceived thing in real estate, and we're like, well, yeah, guys, we've kind of been down that path. Here's what, this isn't a great example, but if you use the BRRRR strategy as an example, the BRRRR strategy is basically refinance property. That's all it is, right? Yeah. But I mean, someone put an acronym to it. They called it BRRRR, and then it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Yeah. Like, oh my God, BRRRR, do you know BRRRR? I'm like, well, yeah, like the first time that I renovated and refinanced the property was probably 25 years ago. Didn't call it BRRRR because I didn't know the acronym at the time, but that's to me refinancing. So, and then, we could be accused sometimes, oh, you guys are the old guys, like you don't get it, and I'm just curious, did you guys, because during that time, I actually didn't know how much of that was flying around. I'm not in the mortgage world.
Yeah, it was hundreds and hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. So were you guys accused of the same stuff? Like you're old school, 100%. You don't get it?
Yeah, 100%. We had clients coming to us being like, well, this person's going to lend my money out and make me this amount of return, blah, blah, blah. Can you guys do that? And we would just, no. And like, no, we can't. And it's one of those things too, for honestly, I'm happy we did it. And also for other people, it's like, always stand by your principles. Like at the end of the day, and the way I looked at it too, it's just math. Like at the end, like just simplify everything. At the end of the day, if something, you always got thinking the way as a lender, I always think of worst case scenarios. So I know if I'm going to bed at night, I don't want to have to worry about where my money is. So I'm just thinking in a worst case scenario, if I have to go and that guy or girl doesn't pay me, how am I going to get my money back? If I know, I'm good, or there's a very, very, very low chance I cannot get it back, then okay, I'm good. I'll
the worst case, and you're okay with it.
I know my worst case. I'm okay with it. But if your worst case is the person leaves and now I'm stuck, that's probably not, again, regardless of it's 100% return. I always like 100% of zero still zero. Yeah. Right. So it's just one of those things. Yeah, we definitely stuck by our guns in a sense and not getting a part of it. It was crazy that even when we first saw it, we were like, what? Like I remember even when the first time, I remember like calling like even like Dave, like, have you ever heard, like, I didn't even know about, like I knew about them, but in the sense of like that they were actually being used that predominantly. And he was like, what? And like everyone was kind of shocked by it. But it served its purpose, I guess, for a while. But
yeah, I know one guy that he said it was going like, he regrets it now. Obviously, he lost a bunch of money, and but he said for him, he's like, okay, it seems obvious now, but he goes, I started with a little bit, it was going well. He's like, if I just put a little bit more, the returns were so good. I'm in a great position. He's like, to him, his words was, I got greedy. Yeah. And that's chase that return, right?
And to be fair too, it's also like you're being pitched and shown a lot of money. And so you're being pitched on how well it can do. So a lot of it, and that's why mortgage brokers have licenses. That's why securities guys have licenses. Because our job is to not steer people wrong in where they invest their money. And so as soon as people start, like to me, like the big, like kind of travesty and all this, there was people out there not caring what they do with someone else's money. Like I look at that, if we're going to lend someone's money out, that's more important than my money. Like I would actually rather me lose the money than they lose the money in general. And so that's the biggest thing. It was like someone had the complete disregard for someone else's life savings basically. And that to me,
in your world,
drives me nuts.
And I get that and I can respect that, but also just in your world, just like the long-term thinking, you're you've busted your ass over, the last however many years to get to where you are. You've done very well for yourself. You've gained all this experience. You start playing the game kind of, I don't know what, loose like that. I was going to say willy-nilly. I'm like, I'm not that old. I can't say willy-nilly. I feel like I got to be 80 to say that. But you kind of play the game loose like that. Your reputation gets dragged
you're
down,
gone.
Right?
So the people, again, you can look it up. I'm not going to drop names, but the people who were doing that aren't in the business anymore. Right, so they must have had a good couple year run, but they're not here anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's always like the short, fast money just like flies quick, right? So and that's the.
But it's totally unregulated because you can go because it's all, I guess, behind the scenes. Like you can go and do that you can go and raise money anywhere as long as person to person. Like with Ontario Securities Commissions, you can't advertise with ONC laws, but I could go, if I go around to individual people, I can raise funds for whatever I want because it's person to person. It's not, I'm not actually doing anything illegal.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, you can go and raise. So a lot of people were just raising money. And so, again, those ones, there's not really much, again. And that's another thing, too. Like, you will give someone funds who has nothing to lose, basically. Yeah. As well, right? If it goes bad, what's their whole kind of, what do they lose in this situation? So, but yeah, people were also taking advantage of it. Basically, like, even that they did have licenses and they were regulated, well, they've lost them. Right. Yeah. So they're not anymore. And then, it started the whole thing with just our governing bodies too. Like I can tell you, like private mortgages now, if you go to a mortgage broker conference, that's like, they are on you. Oh, right. Really? Which good. Like they should be. Like I don't actually have a problem with it, but
no, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. But they are like, now, like we're having to track at the end of every year for a brokerage, we have to track every single deal we did throughout the year. And then we submit basically it's kind of like a high level overview of every deal we did for the whole year.
So they are trying to clamp down on
and so what I noticed was as soon as all this stuff happened, so it kind of happened, I guess, a year and a half ago. So last year's kind of reporting, usually it's just, here's every deal. Well, now there's a whole separate column for the private mortgage. And it's like, give me more details on those, which again, good. But they're starting to notice it was a problem too. So it's getting cracked down on, which is good. You need it because it's
any industry. Like when there's all that money flowing, like all the money printing, all the money flowing through real estate, it gets bonkers, right? And then people just take advantage of situations. Yeah. Look at the crypto world now. And like there's all these meme coins with everything. There's like, I don't know, 1 billion coins of someone in this office owns what? I was like, I thought the name was Dog. Oh, like
Dog with Hat?
No,
that one.
I'm like, oh, Dog with Tail. Oh, maybe it is Dog with Hat. Maybe it is someone. But it's not with, it's whiff.
Yeah.
And I'm oh my God. I'm like, seriously? So, and he's like, I'm like, why do you own that one? He's like, I have no idea. Someone told me to buy something. I'm like, I'll just buy it. Like, and it's just like, you see that so money flows into what could be a good area because there's going to be payment rails and there's US dollar coins and, Bitcoins that serves a purpose. Like there's all these other things that they can be served a purpose on this, in that, call it crypto world. But then people get greedy and you see all these, these crazy things. Did you hear the story about the Haktua coin?
Yeah. There's
like how many
coin.
How many rug pulls are there like this thing? And I mean, so then greed takes over and then a bunch of people lose their money and then people have to go in and regulate it. And that's part of the reason that why people look to the government for different things. Like, hey, go help us. We need you to regulate this thing because everyone's getting screwed, right? This greed element takes over from people. So it gets nuts. Okay. We're going a bit long. Just a couple of questions about mortgages. Current state of the mortgage world. What are you What are you seeing? Bond yields are jumping up and down.
Yeah. Just recently, obviously, with the whole kind of tariff shock news, what's happening, what's not going to happen.
That was crazy when I saw the bond yields open up and they gapped down. Yeah,
it was like, oh, okay, there might be something here now. Because again, the way bond yields move, it's not priced by the Bank of Canada. Most people know it's priced by bond traders. So this year, like actually highly paid stock guys who investment bankers, like they know what they're doing. So when I saw that gap down big, I was like, oh shit, okay, there's something here. So obviously it started to come back a bit. Obviously, no tariffs were announced or held off for 30 days.
I think it bounced. By the end of the day, it looked like it came all
pretty much right back. Yeah. And so it bounced back. But yeah, bond yields are still kind of on a downward trend at this point. So we do expect obviously the next couple of weeks some fixed rates to start coming in a bit lower. Already started getting some calls from banks, hey, having a fixed rate special for the next couple of weeks because they know they have that.
Is that the time of year they do this? Like spring sometimes?
It usually is spring. Yeah. This one is a little early, so it's definitely basically a kind of effective of the bond yields that happened. But yeah, usually you start to see some banks, like obviously it's always different every year. BMO's kind of notorious for it.
I know BMO for a while. Yeah,
they lead the way. The spring comes out, they come out some crazy good rate, and they just kind of gets the market going. So yeah, I do expect this year, real estate wise, mortgage wise, to be pretty big. Like I anticipate just market alone, regardless of kind of off, but market alone, you should see probably like a 10 to 20% increase in volumes this year.
And transactions. From what you guys are sensing.
Correct.
Right now.
And we're already starting to see, like, just to give you an idea. So our office, let's say we would pre-approve 50 people a week back, like kind of throughout 2024. That was kind of, let's just say it was average of 50, 60 people. The past 4 weeks alone, we've been doing like 85 people a week.
Okay.
And again, it hasn't turned into buyers necessarily, but we're starting to see that, okay, everyone's getting ready to go. So that pent up demand's coming. So
that's what we're seeing. People are peeking their heads out.
Exactly.
And sellers too. So that's why we're seeing, and sellers have come out early, it seems too, because we're seeing like an increase in inventory a little bit.
Yep.
But it's, sellers are kind of like, okay, I feel like now is like, stable footing. So it's not even that they expect the values that they would have got two years ago. They're just like, I feel like there's just supply and demand equilibrium kind of now that I'm getting a fair price for today's market. Whereas before maybe they felt like it was going to be a little bit lower than it should have
100%. And you're going to see some more rate drops. Bank of Canada is going to keep dropping rates for like, whether it's 50, like obviously in total of 100 basis points, 50 or not, only 25, and that's it. It's to be seen. But like you're going to get some more rate drops as well. So that'll keep spurring the market too as things go. So yeah, definitely expect 25 to be pretty busy. 26, obviously we'll see like that hopefully should be pretty decently busy as well. And then it really kind of depends on what happens with tariff talk, what happens with obviously new government comes in like next year, like 27, obviously like it's going to be,
there's so many unknowns.
There's so many unknowns now. It's tough to even go 3 or 4 years out and say, hey, what's the market going to be like then? Before I feel like you could kind of regulate it a bit. Now it's like, there's so much that could happen over the next couple of years. It could be crazy.
If we don't get a new government this spring, man, I don't know. We just,
it's got to come. It's got to come.
And it just showed during this whole tariff fiasco that if we had been building infrastructure in this country over the last decade or longer, then we would be in a better position to not be as impacted. We would have other options, right? I will never forget when the Ukraine war started and Germany came to our doorstep asking for our natural gas, and it was turned away for basically green reasons, which no one could really make sense of because they couldn't really articulate them other than just blanketing them under that. And they went to, I think it was Bahrain
and Russia
and Germany. Well, they blew pipelines and stuff, but there still have been through other routes. They've been buying Russian oil. You're right. But they went to Bahrain for natural gas and signed a 20-year deal. Yeah. And I'm like, they came to us for the deal. And we said, no, thank you. I mean, it just blows my mind. And I saw a list the other day of the number of, I didn't know there was these other countries that had done this over in the relatively near past. And there had been a list of like, I think Poland was one. I think there was like 4 or 5 other countries that had come to us for natural gas and we've turned them away. I'm like, what are we doing? It's a resource heavy country. This is crazy.
Doesn't make sense. And then we come into these, like you said, we come into these problems now. Okay, tariff, like we're tariff
and then we're screwed because we're so dependent on it.
Exactly. And that stuff happens. You're going to get into a tariff war every 20, 30, whatever the case. Like, that's not the first tariff war we've ever been in, right? So it's like, but now we've just decided to be so dependent that hurts a lot more.
Yeah, because we've done nothing else.
Exactly.
Like it's just, we've actually sold some of the resources to other countries even, so we don't even own them in our own land.
It's crazy.
Like it's outrageous.
It's gone crazy.
Anyways, man, so thanks. Look, last question. You've done, I don't know, like at your age, I don't know what I was doing still. I had stopped partying, so probably only a couple of years ago. So, but it feels like if I was someone that if I was like 16 or 18 and I was listening to this conversation, I'd be like, man, this guy's done, like, I don't know if you give yourself enough credit for it. Feels like I feel like there's a lot of your hustle has led to learning, has led to results, has led to a lot of stuff, right? But there's no disputing the fact that the results are there. If someone's 16, 18 and listening to this, and they're like, man, like whether it's mortgages or anything else, but I just want to be in a decent, I feel like by the time I'm in my mid 20s, I want to be in a decent position. I want to have some investments. I want to have a place that like a home. Like what do you think if you had to pick the top 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is, what would you tell that person?
Just the first step is just work on yourself first. Like and like kind of like what I just by happenstance ended up doing at university. Just start learning as much as you can about just life, business. If you want to become a doctor, start kind of really pushing yourself toward that. But the internet's the easiest thing to go learn on now. It's very simple. So just go on, start learning, start putting yourself in different situations. And that's kind of the first starting point. It's just 2 hours a day. Just start learning as something you want. So if you want your goal is to buy a house, start learning how to buy a property. If your goal is to get a job, doing whatever, start learning that. Like just start learning and kind of get started, and don't ever turn something down because it's too small. Like there's nothing too small. You got to start somewhere. So I hate the people like, oh, I'm holding out for the right job. Like just go get a job and quit, like, or figure something out, move along the way. So like the biggest thing is don't do nothing, just get started. That's the first thing I would say. And then the other piece is just to make sure you're learning, like put yourself again, like have that kind of that work ethic to now, okay, after 5 o'clock, I finished my full-time job, let's say, or I've just finished school. All right, 2-3 hours tonight, I'm going to go and learn something different, or trying to find, if I want to make some extra money, I'm going to go figure out how to do a little bit of a side hustle. Or just people that just put themselves in position, like awkward, uncomfortable spots, and then figure it out. Basically, put yourself in bad spots, get yourself out of it. That would be the biggest thing I would say, and just start working at it. But the internet's very easy to go learn on. Yeah. So get started there, and then go now. Okay, I'm attracted to this or that. Go find the person in that space that you want to be with. Go find someone there and just say, hey, so what can I do to help? And you'll get started.
And I don't know if you want to share this now, because after saying that, 100 people might be sitting outside your office. But if someone wants to reach out to you guys, your team or whatever, for either a mortgage or anything else that kind of might
yes, fit, our website's www.bmselect.ca, and then our email our company, it'll get to me. It's info@bmselect.ca. So info@bmselect.ca, or you could call our office too. It's I don't remember that. Okay, so just email us.
Email or Google.
Email or Google, but yeah, we're there. You Google our names, you'll find us.
Impressive journey, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really impressive journey. You still can't take a soccer ball off me, or I can't take one off you. But
we'll try again.
But it's funny to think back from that, that baseball field to today. It's I guess we've both come a long way. So it's been a fun journey, man. Really
appreciate you having me. Thank you.